So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down a sample I literally just finished like an hour ago. It's so ethereal and beautiful, and I want to touch on some gems of why it is such. I've got a lot of advice in this video for making these kinds of samples. I've even put drums on top, which initially was a reference, but ended up sounding really cool. So enough yapping, let's get into it. So I started with this phrase, which I literally just created today. I wanted to make it a routine that at least a few days a week, I'm sitting down and just making the best phrases and textures I can. You know, I think a lot of accents and phrases to me are like Lego pieces. They're the Lego pieces of an entire melody or sample. Little building blocks that you can use. And I think getting really good at just creating those little sound bites is really impactful on your sound design skills and your ability to come up with cool textures and melodies. So I started with this phrase, which I created earlier, and all I did was just added some compression, but it sounds like this. Oh, it's got that like just real kind of like muted, like dull sound to it. A lot of white noise, which was unintentional. I was playing some keys and running it through the microcosm pedal, and it just had this noise in the background, which ended up sounding really nice and vintage. And I layered it with this other texture that I had made in the same session earlier today, and it sounds like this. Now you might notice it's actually got a lot of processing, and this was what it sounded like before. So it kind of just sounds like I just pitched it up, to be honest, but when you add everything, what it's doing is creating more of a focus. But with everything, you know, I've got like a little bit of halftime reverb. I've got this magic switch, which is like a chorus plugin. I've got pancake, so it's just panning a lot. The main reason I ended up adding so much processing is I wanted this to be out of the way of that main melody and just kind of sit nicely on top. So the difference it made was this. So I'll do it still in the same pitch, but without the plugins. Just kind of sat a bit too much in the middle with the main melody, so then with everything. So I thought it just sounded nicer sitting like on top of the melody. And then I just recorded on my Moog grandmother, playing some simple notes, following the progression, and it sounds like this. So nice, just like kind of subby tone. There's already a lot of stuff going on in the mid-range, so just really wanted this to sit in those low subby frequencies. And then I've just layered it with these keys, which just came from this analog lab bank. So this was the aquarium preset from Key Major in his analog tapes bank, and it just sounded like this without any processing. And with processing. So it's just a nice simple top line, and it's got a lot of delay, got some of that halftime effect. So I bounced that out, and then I just layered it with this. So together. So it's quite a basic melody, and this just came from Scorch. This was the Synth Keys Blue Key Duke preset, and then I just cranked this effects pattern up, and yeah, it was just simple melody. But for some reason, when I bounced it out, it was like a bit kind of laggy and not in the right places. So I had to like manually shift or stretch some of these areas. So it's actually why it came out a bit glitchier than it was before, but I kind of like it. You can kind of hear it there, like the the little like glitches. And one of my favorite layers in this sample is this like saxophone I got from Splice, which initially sounded like this. So you can hear it's already got some of that reverb. It's kind of nice. It's got an ambient. So I pitched it up to match the project tempo, and I added quite a lot of reverb on this, 70%, with a small delay. So it sounded very kind of intimate, close, but still quite washed out. And then halftime is what's really doing the heavy lifting on this sound. And then just some EQ, compression, delay, and I got this. So on its own, it sounds weird, but together, it just sits so nicely in the back. And then we have the drums coming in. So I love sections like this where you have a full chorus kind of section, but then in the next one, you just strip everything back. There's all this empty space. You know, you could have an artist, a rapper, or a singer on top of it. There's lots of room, and just like the listener can breathe. So a lot of that is because, you know, I've still got that Moog playing, the grandmother, just real subby. Which then I took these drums, also from Splice, but I did a lot of chopping, stretching. I pitched them up a few semitones, used halftime, which I just love on drums, with a subtle amount. And I used this PD, I always forget the name, this MDN tape, basically, which just added some nice oomph. And yeah, the drums alone, they just sound like this. So this was initially just 2 different drum breaks that I had, and I really liked the sound of. So I'll show you what they sounded like. So without any processing, these 2 sounded like this. Really nice bounce on this one, more high-end focused. So after adding processing, so with this one, those little like hi-hat rolls and stuff, there's like a weird like vocal and clap. They're the effects, the sound bites that I really wanted. So they're the ones I chopped up, added onto these 3 different layers with different effects. And personally, I can't be bothered with automation a lot of the time. So what I prefer to do is just create multiple tracks, and I'll just duplicate it and add the different effect that I want on that different track, as opposed to automating the effect, because just with some plugins it's really awkward, and I just think it takes too long. So yeah, these are the effects together. So I love those stutters, the bounce. Obviously you can hear I've used a lot of delay and a lot of saturation. That's pretty much it. And I've got Portal here, which is giving it this 16th note bounce at the end. So you'll see here. You can hear that subtle 16th note bounce, and same on this one, except I think this was an 8th note one. So it just adds a lot of rhythm, especially because they're small chops. It just plays nicely with the main drum loop, which again sounds like this. So yeah, then moving into the next section, we've got the same layers, but I've just chopped them differently. I've taken out the chops. So yeah, moving on, we've got the same layers that I've already covered. I've just chopped them slightly differently when it comes to the drums. added this back in, and then wait for this outro. I'm telling you, just wait for the outro. Firstly, same layers again from the previous section. I love the chords coming back in. This reintroduces the melody. It reminds the listener like, oh, this is familiar. And I think just even doing stuff like this is such a cool way to reintroduce drums. So and again, that portal preset, that gives it such a nice chop and like kind of a sense of like a riser or like crescendo into that next section, and the next section just goes crazy. So So first, before the most epic part at the end, I just want to say that this 808, I don't normally use 808s within Logic. I've learned how to use FL Studio now, but as I was just in the flow state, I pulled up like a really old 808 preset I had, and it could definitely be mixed better, but it's just following some basic notes. So a pretty basic pattern, and I just felt like this section needed an 808 instead of just copy and pasting the same like subby bass that I've had before. This just had a bit more of that like distortion, the harmonics, more of that like mid-range distortion you often get with 808s. So, and then I've got this synth here. And this came from Omnisphere. So this layer, I think, just adds this melancholy and this kind of mid-range focus and reverb and delay I've got going on here. So I just think it's a really nice sound. So I bounced it out, and you can see in the next final section, I just pitched it up an octave, copy and pasted. It's a really easy way to get variation, and it just required a bit of mixing because there's a lot of layers and large reverby delayed sounds. This is where I think you are tested with your mixing abilities, because it's so easy to muddy up a mix when you have really high delays and decays on your reverb. Things get washed out, things get muddy. So I think it's really important you understand how to use the stereo field, how to pan, and how to make things sound far away and make others sound closer, so that everything kind of sits in its own space. I think that's really, really key with these washed out epic sounding samples. You really, I think, need to try dial in some of those mixing habits. So yeah, I cut out a lot of the lows and just ducking some of those harsher frequencies that I heard. And also this happens to be where a lot of these other melodics are sitting, again, like this. Now, I would honestly probably even add a bit more saturation and high end to this 808, but Again, it's an old preset. I wasn't too bothered. I was just having so much fun with this. Yeah, moving on to the final section, I'm going to show you a bit of a raw take of it because I had several different vocals here. One of them I liked with, but I also liked without. So I'll let you guys decide whether or not I should keep it. But yeah, this is the final section. Oh, I love it. I love it. Especially when I was listening to that on loop, I was just getting so lost in this section. And to be honest, I kind of rushed it. Like, I just wanted vocals on it. I wanted to hear this section with an artist. So I just went to Splice, grabbed a bunch of vocal layers and did a little bit of editing. I kind of just pitched them around, added some compression. I'll play you just the vocals on their own, these female vocals. So again, rather than automating and having them all on the same track and just being really awkward with that, I just created a different track where on this one, I had similar plugins, except I added this scanner vibrato and I just used this stereo diffuser. So it gives it this kind of like waviness. I'll take it off. And then with the vibrato. So just gives it this kind of waviness and it's dynamic. You know, you have one vocal that's lush and then this one's like wavy, and then so there's a lot happening, there's a lot of movement, it's very dynamic, and I think that's really cool when you are like in a section that you want to be impactful, you want to hit. It helps to not just have all your layers sound very stale and kind of similar in processing. I think it's nice to have contrasting tracks where maybe, again, one has crazy distortion on it, or one's got like a gate, or like it's being chopped around and stuff. So, and also I love these first little textures that I have that come in the section. They sound like this. I was really hearing like something shimmery. I literally searched shimmer or shimmer texture on Splice, found these, pitched them around, added some delay. I think it just had a nice sense of interesting impact when it came in. So it's nothing special. I could have definitely spent more time on it, but again, I was just in the flow and excited to just finish making it and record this video. So yeah, I could definitely add more there if I wanted, but it was just, you know, adding some of that ear candy. And then one of my favorite layers in the end is not even the vocals, it's actually these two, which is the same layer, just different processing. Oh, such a nice call and response. So without any of the processing, it just sounds like this. So a nice little like ARP accent, and then I just pitched it up an entire octave. So then I could have that call and response, and yeah, just added a bunch of delay, some panning, because again, there's a lot going on. I have all these vocal layers going back and forth, then trying to add a shimmer. This is where, again, using the stereo field, imagining the space around you, where can things sit in their own place and not be in the way. I like to use Pancake these days, which is just a great panning plugin, so you can just hear it move around. So it's kind of subtle, but probably more noticeable if you're wearing headphones. And then I've got the same layer here, but just with halftime. And so with the vocals. So yeah, quite a full section. And then I have this super simple trick to get really cool sounding drums. And it's just taking the same drums that I had before, duplicating it onto a different track. Again, I'm not using automation. I'm just adding different effects separately. So without the effects, again, it's this one. Okay, but then I've got way more halftime on here, you can see, with a 90% mix. Previously I didn't have a big reverb on the drums, but this one I did. I adjusted the EQ here and I changed the width so it sounded more intimate. So check this out. Like, that is so cool. It sounds like it's in a big room with you, just like in the corner or something. If I compare it to what they sounded like before. Yeah, just having drums sound like they're in the room with you, like someone's actually playing drums over there in the corner. I think it's just a really cool touch, and it's a sample, it's a song, I don't know what it is. I was just having fun with this. I don't normally add drums on my tracks, but one thing I've learned is that music should be fun, and I'm creating, I'm having fun. I'm not trying to send out a million loops a day anymore. I'm just creating and improving as a producer and sharing the tips and advice that I've learned myself through experience, through mentors, and yeah, hopefully it helps. This is a really cool, ethereal, beautiful track, and I love making this kind of thing, and I think I'm getting pretty good at making these kinds of things. So yeah, let me know what you think, and if you want me to work one-on-one with you on making tracks like this, working on content creation, working on your beats, whatever it is, you can shoot me a message or click the first link in the description. We can book a call, it's completely free, and we'll talk about your goals and where you're trying to get to. And yeah, until then, I'll see you in the next video, guys. Peace.